Welcome to the FilmGamer Podcast, Season 5, Episode 10, Number 60 overall. This, my friends, is a new era I'm about to enter, as I am moving to Ottawa because of a new job that I got that hopefully goes well, and hopefully I can continue to deliver you the best in entertainment, film, and video game news, as well as other stuff, like TV and all the other hangers on. I love to hold space for TV. So without further ado, I'm going to get into the box office first because it is fresh on Sunday. And then I'll go through my film journal. And then I'll go through some other stuff that I can think of. So getting to today's weekend box office, we have Now You See Me, Now You Don't. They finally used the title, opening to 21 million domestically. Overall, that is good because it is $75 million. 20 million of that, so about the same as it opened domestically, is from China. And it takes place in France. I think a diamond heist reunites retired horseman illusionists with new performers Greenblatt, Smith, and Sessa as they target dangerous criminals. Okay, and I know Rosamund Pike is the bad guy, but this is the first time I've seen from Box Office Mojo where it mentions the actors' names in the plot of the movie. Is that like AI written? Probably. I mean, most of Box Office Mojo gets worse by the day, so because it's not like Ariana Greenblatt or Dominic Sessa or Justice Smith are like names, They're not like DiCaprio, who I'll get to. But anyways, this movie corrects the wrong of Now You See Me Too, which for whatever reason they didn't just call it Now You Don't. So that's kind of annoying. But it does have a different director, Ruben Fleischer, the director of Zombieland, who directed Jesse Eisenberg and Woody Harrelson previously, so, made him a good choice for this movie, I suppose. And is this his first movie since Uncharted? I think so. Yes, it is. No word, it's funny, at all on a sequel to that movie, which I just kind of find funny. It's like, it made $400 million, it had a huge fan base, the head of the studio is like, we got a new franchise, and then they just, no movement, because they want to get Spider-Man sorted before they get Tom Holland on something. And now he's filming Spider-Man. It's going to be ready for a second year. Still no talk of the movie, but these things come and go. Anyways, this movie has the best reviews of the franchise at 61% on Rotten Tomatoes. It is a series where all of the, movies have pretty much been critically underwhelming at some point, but doesn't matter. People like magician stuff. They want something new so badly, they'll go back to something from 2016, which is when the last one came out. This one is written by Michael Leslie, who I believe wrote Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. He has a credit on this. British playwright. Am I correct in that? Yes, I am. And he also wrote Assassin's Creed. The screenplay of that movie is not the best, but there's stuff to like in that movie. Anyway, and then Paul Wernick and Rhett Reese, which, of course, Fleischer has worked with before, who on Zombieland, that was kind of their main calling card. And then they did Deadpool. And then Seth Grahame-Smith, who did Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter. And then you have Eric Warren Singer, who I know from American Hustle and whatnot. But anyways, these movies, the explaining the plot is needless. Apparently this one has something to do with draining the wallet of some kind of cryptocurrency exchange. I don't know. There's a lot to go on. The thing that confuses me is that, like, the first one has so much stuff going on where it's like it has both Ruffalo and Morgan Freeman, and they kind of like Morgan Freeman goes to prison, and then the second one it's like Michael Caine and Daniel Radcliffe and stuff. I'm gonna need like a previously on because they swapped out Lizzie Kaplan back to Isla Fisher, who was pregnant during the second one, so they just bring her back now, and then Lizzie Kaplan isn't there. But yeah, a lot of the magic in this movie is just BS, and that's probably where some of the reviews come from, because they're like, none of the magic done in this movie could conceivably be performed by a human. But yeah. Anyways, the consensus is getting the gang back together. Now You See Me, Now You Don't repeats a lot of the franchise's familiar tricks, although there's still charm in seeing these characters pull the proverbial rabbit out of the hat. Yeah. I like Jesse Eisenberg's character. I love the interview that he does with a woman named Rowena on the first Now You See Me, where they get into this interview and they're so sassy to each other. And it's like he likes her because she's attractive. She likes him because he's like super famous. They're both nervous, and so they try and guard that by being cutting, and they're both like an extra step too far being cutting, and it's kind of funny. It's the best thing about the series is that interview. Go watch Jesse Eisenberg be interviewed by Rowena, and everybody debates on whether they're being truly mean to each other or they're just being flirty. But number 2 at the box office was The Running Man movie, which I want to see because it's from Edgar Wright. The reviews for it are decent. It's weird to me that people frame the reviews of The Running Man as being like bad when like Now You See Me gets a pass. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, oh, well, if you're always terrible, that's fine. But if you're great once and then not as great the second time, people are like, well, what's going on? They've lost it. Edgar Wright is washed. And, granted, Edgar Wright did not lend me his copy of, I think it was Blowout when we interacted on Twitter. I forget what movie else I wanted to see, but that's okay. He can still just make the movies, Celebrities don't owe you anything. There's a lot of this stuff where it's like, I ran into this celebrity and they were so rude to me. It's like, they don't owe you anything. They're not working. Stop bothering them on their days off. Don't expect anything. Just be polite and move on. And that's what more people really should do. But I plan on seeing The Running Man this week, so you'll hear from me after that. Number 3 at the box. Well, I want to get ahead of something on The Running Man, which is opens to 17 million. It costs 110 apparently, and just ignore any of the budget hawks here. It's like, this movie had no business costing 110. We don't make movies. We have no idea. The one that I feel allows for some scrutiny is when a blockbuster, which costs a lot, sucks. Now, this is supposed to pass for what is a Paramount Pictures blockbuster, so the 100 million price tag is somewhat justified, but it looks pretty cheap. Granted, because Michael Bacall is behind, and Edgar Wright, Baby Driver, I wasn't sure what to think of too. That had a weird tone, and that ended up being good, so I'm excited to watch it, and I'll get back to you. Number 3 is Predator Badlands, which is a successful movie. 66 million. It opened to the highest of any Predator movie, and it's just that franchise is going to keep running along. I don't really need to dwell on it. It costs 105 million. It's already broken past that worldwide, so it's going to be in the black. No problem. Number 4 is, I guess I would call it a sleeper hit, Regretting You, which was the source of my ire, but not as much as this TikTokers from last week. I think it's called Rate and See, and he just every person, I don't know how much of a critic versus pundit he is, but he seems more of a critic, which is good, but every critic has a movie that they kind of get famous for, have a famous or really sharp opinion on, and this is the movie that broke this guy. Now, this movie, interestingly, didn't open to a whole lot. It opened to about 13.5 million, but it has since, in the 4 weeks that it's played, it's gotten up to 44 million, so that's more than 3 times its opening. So anytime a movie does, the best you can hope for is twice the opening, as to me at least, the standard, because most wide release films, they open really wide and then they're just constantly bleeding theaters in a healthy marketplace, and if it's really good, then people hang on to it. We still haven't fully recovered from COVID, so movies are hanging around. There are holes in the schedule in terms of movies that fit in the market and that kind of thing. Um, so yeah, it's something to consider. Um, Moving on down to number 5 is The Black Phone, 74 million, 127 worldwide. Again, in the black. Don't need to reiterate it again. At number 6, we have Nuremberg, the movie that at TIFF a lot of people wanted to get into to see. A couple people enjoyed it, a couple people didn't. It's one of those movies that is imperfect but done at a reasonable professional level that, everybody is interested in it to some degree. Um, I'm interested in seeing it, even though most of the feedback I got from people that I reasonably trust is just, it's okay, or I didn't think. It's interesting to me. I like history. It's an important period of history, most popular period of history post World War II. So, and James Vanderbilt wrote Zodiac, so he gets a lifetime pass for me. The Vanderbilts do have that reputation. Number 7 is Keeper, the new film by Osgood Perkins. I don't know much of what this is about other than it being a horror film, starring Rossif Sutherland and Tatiana Maslany. Maslany? I still don't know how to pronounce it. But anyways, overall, people find it interesting. I just like that this guy keeps making films at a reasonable clip. I mean, the last film he made was The Monkey in February, and now he's already got another one coming out, so keep that economy rolling, Osgood. Number 8 is Sarah's Oil. This is released by Amazon MGM Studios, and it's a religious film about an 11-year-old Sarah Rector, an African-American girl born in Oklahoma Indian Territory in the early 1900s, who believes there is oil beneath the barren land she is allotted and whose faith is proven right. Oh, spoiler alert. Anyways, the reviews for this, if I may check right now, it also stars Sonequa Martin Green, who's currently on Boston Blue, is good. The funny thing is that there's just a consensus on the audience, at least first, which I find funny because it's at 83%. The audience says heartfelt tribute to blah, 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 her journey. I don't care very much. I'm interested in what the top critics say. Variety, don't be surprised if favorable word of mouth enables to reach beyond the target. I don't care about word of mouth. Like, this whole attitude of, like, we need to watch for what other people think about the movie. Two things matter when it comes to movies. Do you think it is good? Did you have a good time watching it? And then the second one is, if you're an actual bean counter, did the movie make money? To the rest, it's like, oh, can I sell this as an exciting movie? It doesn't matter. All this attitude of, like, did this movie make a profit? Did it not? I'm sorry, are you an investor? I don't care. Anyways, we got, for the last bit that I'll just go through, we have Chainsaw Man, the movie, Reze Arc, an R-rated anime movie. Made a decent amount of money, 41 million domestic. I believe it was, number 1 at the box office pre-Halloween. And maybe I'll watch it. I don't watch a lot of anime, but this and Demon Slayer have been, like, really big hits, so, it's hard to look away. And I also feel like I'm missing out if I'm seeing a really successful movie, even if it's something like Ninja 2, which is, like, one of the most successful movies ever. I mean, I tried watching Wolf Warrior 2, and I got about halfway through that, like an hour and 10 into it, and then I'm just like, I'm too tired, I don't want to see this. So, there's no correlation between success and quality. Finishing off, you have Begonia at 10, 4 weeks in. It's sinking a bit. 15 million, though, pretty standard for art house fare. 30 million worldwide. I don't really know how much it costs, so I'm gonna look it up here. Of course, when I write a mistake, there we go. I wonder why it's called Begonia. But yeah, it costs 45 to 55 million. Good, I suppose. I've heard people complaining about this cost. I don't know if they're just budget hawks or the movie doesn't add up to it. But the last film that they did together, that is Emma Stone, Jesse Plemons, and Yorgos Lanthimos. Well, that one was super cheap because that was Kinds of Kindness. But before that, Poor Things. Um, you know, it had a decent amount of production value to it, even though it was obvious that was like a very fictional world. So this one cost, drumroll, that one cost 35 million, so this cost 20 million more. So I'll be interested to see if that money is seen on screen. Anybody who's seen it can tell me. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the top 10 movies. Um, any special releases? Not really. Arco and Surat premiere in two theaters each, and they each have pretty good per theater averages. Again, these are by Neon, so, impressive. So that's it for box office. Now, moving on to the Smashing Machine, I'm going to go through quite a few. I just watched Good Fortune. Oh no, Good Fortune is bad. That can't happen. The trailer for this was really good, but I always, from the get go, was a bit suspicious of it because, number one, it looked like it was shot like an insurance commercial. Now, in this movie, there are some shots considered. You have Aziz, standing in the middle, and, a couple of symmetrical shots that are like interesting. But the lighting and coloring is just very flat without very many interesting choices. The trailer for it was really funny, but I remember at TIFF somebody saw it and they just didn't like how a joke was made about Aziz Ansari's character living in his car. They didn't, props to them, refer to the movie as like, oh, Aziz is this, and like, review the film in actor terms, which is like, oh, Seth Rogen's character this. No, they did the thing you should do, which I need to work on sometimes, is review the movie as it is, not with the baggage history of like the actor behind it. And they were just kind of like, the movie is out of touch. And I found that basically to be true. The stakes are low. The premise is sketched very thinly. I felt disconnected from it all. Aziz shouldn't have been the lead. Like, a lot of people like to put on all these hats of like writing and then directing and then starring, and they kind of lean one way or the other. Aziz isn't much of an actor, so him and Rogen should have switched positions. And the movie is just far too pat with its ending, like after school special television episode, and nothing is learned or gained by the characters really in this movie. So I gave it 1.5 stars, a couple chuckle funny line ratings, but yeah, kind of disappointing to see Aziz after all this time. I speculated that Jimmy Kimmel watched this movie, didn't like it, and then interviewed Aziz and then just basically attacked him for taking the Riyadh money because he seems like a sellout, and that comes across in this, which is kind of surprising because Master of None, particularly season 2, is very, very good and was the perfect kind of pre-pandemic kind of romantic homage kind of thing. But of course, with Aziz, he begins the movie with an reference to There Will Be Blood, with There Will Be Buns, like a grocery store that Aziz is waiting outside, or a cinnamon bun gift shop. And my brother was like, oh no, he's referencing a better movie. Don't do that. But anyways, Jane Austen wrecked my life. This movie is another one that had a really great trailer, and in fact, I discovered it on this podcast when I was scrolling through the box office, and I decided, I think it was in May, one of the May episodes, to like, oh, let me see what these like movies opening in one or two theaters are like. And then I went and checked their reviews, and they were well reviewed, and I'm like, oh, this movie seems interesting. So I decided to watch it. This movie has a couple of choice great lines. It is mostly in French, which is kind of disappointing because it's like fakes you out where the trailer is mostly in English, and then the first scene is in English, and then the second scene is in French, and then 20 minutes later she goes to a retreat in England. It's about a woman who's a writer, also a bookshop owner. She has kind of a situationship going with her best friend who she kisses before going on this writer's retreat where she meets Jane Austen's great great grandson or something like that, who doesn't like her books and is overrated, and they don't get along, and it's like a total Pride and Prejudice type situation. And you think as soon as they get there, oh, they're going to start speaking English, and then 5 minutes later they start speaking French, and it doesn't turn back. So I had a bit of problems with the closed captioning, but I was just happy to be watching this film. One of the great lines it has is, I love being disturbed. People don't dare anymore. It's a shame. And isn't that true? That's enough for 3 stars for me. As for the main character, the plot of it isn't that heavy, and the characters aren't that deep. You can go in on one or the other, but you can't strand for both. It feels stretched thin even at 94 minutes. So again, if it cut off like 15 minutes, that'd be great. I ask of this character, what do you have writer's block for? You're a French bookstore worker who hasn't had sex in 2 years. Pfft, okay, I found that maybe not as believable because you're seeing a bunch of people every day and you're in France and you're in the prime of your life. It just felt like a decision maybe reflected of the director that the character didn't bring to life, because the character seems like a very free spirit. So this came in on the low end of expectations. I found it wrapped up too easily. It underdevelops the romance because it doesn't have much plot, but underdevelops its characters too, and still feels long at 94 minutes. Would I recommend it to anyone? No, but a lot of women do like it. So, it's not terrible, but, if you don't like watching French movies or something, that can be a bit of a struggle. Another small women's movie, also a premiere from its director, freshman film, is Sorry Baby. This is one of the highest rated films of 2025, actually. And I saw it listed on Sony's streaming service, and I'm like, should I spend one of the tickets on this? And I decided not to, and I was thankful I did. My mom watched this movie and thought it was like whatever. The 2 stars are for the John Carroll lunch I write, because John Carroll Lynch does one scene in this movie, which is great. I give it the other half star for the editing of the after sequence of the event of which this movie takes place. I find this movie overstays its welcome by about 15 to 20 minutes. Sadly, I feel like I've seen this subject in indie movies so many times now. There's not a lot to recommend here. I had a hard time walking in for the first 30 minutes of this film. And the first 30 minutes of this film just, it's like, oh, it's a twee, neighborly indie film about a girl who doesn't have much of a life, a pretty boring life that's not really worth dramatizing, but it's supposed to be relatable because she's like a millennial who is like depressed and stuff. And I'm like, here we go. And then 30 minutes in, sexual assault happens. And I was like, oh, this film is about this. Okay. And kind of like the character struggle not to have it define her life, but in doing so, it kind of violates its own parameters, because if you don't want it to be about that, then you have to have a separate conflict. Elle, the Paul Verhoeven movie, famously had a sexual assault scene, but had a whole other separate plot to it of like the woman going on with her day or something like that. I don't want to say that's what this film needed, because it's a character, actor, director, writer, whatever, telling a very personal story, but there just needed to be more here. And I just have seen this type of story in other indie movies in the last 15 years, and those explored a lot more. So moving backward, we have Heaven Can Wait. I originally saw Down to Earth as a child, And so that was still stuck in my head. But this came on Paramount Plus. It is a movie that is co-directed by Warren Beatty and Buck Henry, and co-written by them both. Really great casting. You have Julie Christie, whose eyes are the window to the soul. They can bring you back to life. It's softened a bit by me having seen Down to Earth first, because the premise isn't as fresh to me, but Heaven Can Wait is well written, funny, and well acted. It also stars Jack Warden Beatty as a quarterback who basically wants to make the team and then gets unceremoniously killed and put in the body of a rich man. And Julie Christie is the love interest. You also have a couple of other actors in it. I always forget this actor's name. Not James Mason, who's in it, is very good. I remember him from The Verdict. There's Diane Cannon, the beauty queen. She's very funny. There's also Vincent Gardenia. But the person that I was trying to think of, other than Buck Henry, who is also in the movie, is who am I thinking of? Charles Grodin. Yeah. Who was in Midnight Run. He's funny too. Yeah. I'm trying to think of what this was from though. Oh, that's how they did. Because it's about an NFL quarterback. So I'm like, man, how did they get all these extras? And there's really something about seeing like real extras. They filmed it during halftime of the San Diego Chargers versus LA Rams preseason game in the Memorial Coliseum. So the people were already there. And interestingly, videotape was used for some effect shots and transferred to 35mm film. So that's pretty cool. Second of 3 film adaptations of the 1938 play of the same name. Okay, so Here Comes Mr. Jordan is the first one. And that one starred Claude Rains. Yeah, okay. I can see that. So this has been done a bunch of times. Horton and Gleason reprise their roles in the film sequel, Down to Earth. Oh, Down to Earth was the sequel. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. This is kind of... In the 43 version was a Best Picture Oscar nominee. No connection to the source material. It's kind of funny seeing this and Good Fortune in the same week. But Good Fortune kind of wastes this premise because the two characters are pretty close to one another. And I just don't buy Seth Rogen as the type to be like an out-of-touch rich guy. And the characterization in that is like very thin. In Heaven Can Wait, the characters are very defined, and they all have goals and obstacles and stuff. It's a very, very good screenplay. I'm just curious about like what's the I guess I'd read it later, but because Wikipedia does not give you good you can hear it there, me struggling. It does not give you good one-sentence descriptions of stuff. I wish it would, but it doesn't. It does when it's in pre-production, but it's basically about a goddess angered by a musical's take on Greek myths joins the show's cast and convinces the producer to make changes, but her revisions turn it into a failure. It's kind of funny. Now, if I am to go, I'm going to guess, because it's a Chris Rock movie, that Down to Earth was poorly reviewed, even though the directors are decent, and now it would be better. A toned-down Chris Rock fails to bring a limp script to life as the movie moves from one gag to the next. Rock's opening scene is very funny. After that, it's a deep downhill slide. Likeable Chris Rock in a comedy about race. Makers of Down to Earth were faced with a dilemma nobody would have anticipated. Boosting the star screen time kills the comedy. Yeah, okay. And then, the rest were before or whatever. It's only 87 minutes. Now, if I search for Down to Earth, the original, though, I'm curious whether that will have good reviews. Now, I'm thinking it's like kind of survivor bias because, it, what reviews are still standing there. So the film may annoy those who do not thoroughly enjoy swinging everything in sight. I don't know what that means. A silly story with lavish technicolor extravaganza contrives to make a fairly entertaining musical. And then it stars Rita Hayworth looking as good as she's ever looked. Hey, sounds good to me. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Maybe I'll give it a watch. These photos don't tell much about it. Click, click, click. Every single one of these, it's funny, taken from a stage play. Every single one of these old movies always look like a stage play anyways. But hey, I've never seen a Rita Hayworth movie, so maybe I'll give this a shot. Then previously I saw The Smashing Machine, which I gave 4 stars. I thought it was well photographed and edited, good soundtrack and performances from Dwayne Johnson, Emily Blunt, and Ryan Bader. All worthy of recognition. The makeup in Mark is convincing and great. The score is great. Benny Safdie's direction is great and not annoying for once. There's one thing it falls short of. It's that it's a reminder of what it means to be sportsmanlike and disciplined than having anything compelling to say specific to sport. That works as a uniting factor more than anything. I am told it is a shot-for-shot remake of the documentary of the same name, pretty much. So go watch the 2002 documentary anyways. Uptown Girls, 2 stars. 1 star for Michael Ballhaus's cinematography, another for the costume design. Both are good. This is kind of like the poor man's 13 going on 30. I believe Bozy Aiken directed this one. The music doesn't work. The boyfriend doesn't work. The plot is threadbare and paint by numbers. Director Bozy Aiken doesn't gather anything from this plot, and it doesn't use the Billy Joel song. It's a disappointment for a nostalgic glam 2000s film. It's certainly no 13 going on 30, which has a banger soundtrack, great characters, sense of whimsy and joy, and true romance in it. This is like the phony false note version of that. So I was disappointed when I watched it, especially after a night of like having to swap through so many movies, which of course, like, I have the Blu-ray of To Die For in my hands. Everybody agrees on it. Let's watch this. Okay. And then it doesn't play, of course, on the 4K Blu-ray player, which I always have problems with. So that's very annoying. And I'm like, well, I'll try on my Xbox, which plays most things. Doesn't work on that either. It doesn't even register. And I'm like, okay, is this out of region or something? And it's like, no, it's a Criterion version. So that's very irritating to me. Anyways, I did 2.5 stars to Frankenstein. Didn't think it needed to be made. Didn't like the cheap digital look. Even though, a lot of good filmmaking going on in that. And of course, I love Oscar Isaac and Guillermo del Toro, so for wishing my aunt a happy retirement. I thought it was fine while watching it, but I saw Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the Kenneth Branagh version, which granted does a lot of silliness to it, makes a lot of mistakes, but I just liked how operatic that one was, and the look of that a lot better. If I look back, it won't matter too much, but I just want to see who the cinematographer was, because Dan Lausten is a good one. Roger Pratt did the cinematography on this. Rest in peace. Died at 77, so good long life. He did Brazil, Batman, The Fisher King, Year of the Comet, a movie called Shadowlands by Richard Attenborough, Frankenstein, 12 Monkeys, the 1998 Avengers, the British TV series adaptation, The Grey Owl, that Richard Attenborough also did. I didn't know that. The End of the Affair, 102 Dalmatians with Adrian Biddle, also a good cinematographer. And I liked 102 Dalmatians as a kid, at least. Chocolat, Chamber of Secrets. I wonder who shot the first one. Troy, Goblet of Fire as well. And then Inkheart, Dorian Gray, a movie so bad it barely released. The Karate Kid was the last major movie that he did. and his last credit. And he was nominated for End of the Affair, but not much else. Kind of fascinating. A lot of British Academy Award nominations, though. Yeah, Year of Comet I hear good things about. Well, it's written by William Goldman, so of course. The plot concerns the pursuit of the most valuable bottle of wine in history, referring to 1811. Great comment. Oh, yeah, I get it. Critical reaction was panned. Wow. Happens to be Yeats's neighbor in the south of France. Yeats, who did The Dresser. Yeah. Goldman, who is the screenwriter, wanted to make a movie about their three favorite films, The Highlands, Riviera, and Red Wine. That's what they did. Scenery's pretty. One can practically smell cork. There you go. Goldman later said it was decent. I bet it is. Not sure when, if I'll see it and when, but anyway. 102 Dalmatians. I just wanted to look this up anyways. Because the reviews for it were what? That it was short or something? 30%. More of the same. Drags in parts. Potentially boring to children. Too violent for a G-rated movie? I didn't notice that when I saw it as a kid. Ebert gave it 2.5 out of 4. Glenn Close does what she did. Does more than can be done. Cruella is almost too big for a live-action film and requires animation to fit her operatic scale. I get that. But, yeah. Who cares? Didn't care about Cruella. Don't care about the rest. A Godfather Part 2 style sequel would be cool. Why am I down this rabbit hole? Because I wanted to see what else Kevin Lima did. He was a character designer on Little Mermaid, a story animator on Oliver and Company. He was a Disney guy. Story on Aladdin, and then got promoted to director for Goofy Movie Tarzan 102. And then he did not go back to directing. He's credited as a director on Enchanted. That is incorrect, because no, he did it. So that means that Disenchanted, that Shankman directed. Wow, I thought Shankman directed the original. Man, that is weird. I guess I gotta see Disenchanted. It's just so weird that movie, came out, 2022. Yeah, 38%. Anyway, I mean, the first one was like whatever, but yeah. Yeah, 3 stars, blah, 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 can't recapture the magic. What a rabbit hole, I'm down. Okay, let's get back to it. So, Eden. I gave this movie 3.5 stars because it takes the did you see this movie as like a coworker movie, they call it, where it's a movie somebody else tells you about that they watched. Because people who generally have a general know-how about films but are also incurious don't really watch movies like this. So I respect this movie more than I like it. It's about a group of basically 5 people in families who come to this deserted island to try and make their own utopia. True to its name, multiple actors are nude or semi-nude in this film, Eden, directed by Ron Howard. Jude Law goes full frontal in an act of intimidation to Ana de Armas, which doesn't work because Jude Law is not unpleasant to look at. Ana de Armas is soaking wet in the see-through dress and does her typical 40 routine with an evil, phony twist to it. It's almost too annoying a performance, but its phoniness is called out. One of the other Letterboxd reviewers said, "Is she terrible? Is she brilliant? Who can tell?" Sydney Sweeney pulls out a boob and starts breastfeeding in order to get out of an interrogation as an act of defiance. There's a lot of people putting their bodies on the line. All of these actors put their bodies on the line for the sake of cinema, in a way, in front of and behind the camera in terms of subtext, for the sake of cinema, and truly in a way that does serve the story and its themes. The movie Hollywood was scared to make, so Ron Howard went out, made it independently, released it in order for Amazon to slap its logo on it and fill the presentation with the most obnoxious gambling ads that make you question society. Yes, I started watching this film and because Amazon introduced ads, which is probably the most evil thing any company has ever done, where you have something that doesn't have ads and then they add them. I was hit with a very obnoxious gambling ad, and I'm like, is this movie even worth it? I almost turned it off. Next time for a movie, I'll do that. I've I've done it before for YouTube, and they notice, so keep doing that. It's hard to complain about this movie because everybody is giving it their all. The problem with the film isn't the so-so screenplay, because the overall story is rock solid. It actually is in the editing that, like with any film, should be 20 minutes shorter. I wonder if this is just me, but I kind of feel that way. You have to really kill your darlings when you're doing a movie, but too many people think that, you're gonna cut the meat off, and they usually go the opposite and add 20 more minutes because they want to feel more grandiose. Um, Anna de Armas's accent is bad, but that's the point of her character. Sweeney's accent is shaky, but makes up for it with good physical acting. There's a traumatic birth sequence, which are always effective, and Ron Howard delivers on the intensity of the sequence, as he's been known to do his whole career. He has not lost his fastball. This is the argument I make with older directors now. I find that the system changed under many directors and they can't keep up. Modern directors like Howard and Spielberg and all of them, who maybe haven't had a hit in a while, the industry actually hasn't changed, and if it has changed, it's because they changed with it or they changed it themselves. The difference is the stories that they are interested in telling are less appealing to the masses, because they're like, I've done my hits, I want to tell interesting new stories, and they're just not looking in very many dangerous places, although this is a dangerous film to make. Moving backwards again, House of Wax, 2.5 stars. Finally seeing this movie as intended, DVR'd and TV edited on the commercial-filled AMC channel. The film is boring despite a cool final set piece and Jared Padalecki's gruesome death. He gets his Achilles heel snapped, and he's glued, basically, and covered in wax and pulled apart and that kind of thing. The bad guy is pretty weak because he's not that scary. Alicia Cuthbert runs away from him pretty easily. The wax stuff itself is creepy, but the rest of the movie doesn't have a lot of stuff going for it. It's called House of Wax. It actually is basically a remake of the movie Tourist Trap, which Jean-Claude Serra, this was his first film. He later on made Nonstop, a bunch of films with Liam Neeson, Carry On most recently, and a couple of others, Orphan. Chad Michael Murray is okay as a badass, but is far too useful compared to his sister, who plays Alicia Cuthbert, who plays his twin, who is just a victim running around, that you don't feel any tension for his character. He's like an overpowered character, basically. And I don't think the dye job on Cuthbert is great, although it kind of gives the impression of melted wax. I also don't think it almost looks like there's a wig on Hilton. It might have actually been better if they swapped their roles, or even leads. If Hilton had been the lead, that would have made the movie more camp and probably pulled off what it's going for. Also, because Cuthbert is a blonde and Hilton is naturally brown, it would have been interesting had they reverted to that. But a lot of the material here is interesting on paper but tedious on plot. Now, moving backward to How to Have Sex, this movie I gave 3 stars. I called it British torture porn, a nightmare version of that Family Guy Cutaway, or UK Spring Breakers. I won't bother with the Family Guy Cutaway if you don't get it, where they talk about high-class British porn. Yeah, this is the subgenre I don't like, of millennial makes a film, but they do have something to say. I write this. It made me think internally about culture. It's funny to me the nation that bore King Henry VIII and Prince Andrew makes a film about how, if only society didn't have such terrible attitudes towards intimacy, looking at virginity as if it's some disease to get rid oneself of through regretful actions and atone for later. But perhaps 28 years later just deeply affected my view of British culture. Young women who have had similar experiences might watch this and feel better about themselves, or at least a bit more normal, and that's the most important thing. But I can't help but be annoyed how, yet again, Gen Y manages to tackle a subject Gen X or boomers have covered before and rob it of any levity or any instance of something else that someone might enjoy. Because filmmaking to me is wish fulfillment. It's escapism, and it's just all of these movies are like, here's how this potentially cool, exciting thing is actually boring and depressing. And it's just, I find that creatively bankrupt. It was still reasonably well done. I thought it was interesting, the subject it conveyed, which is right there in the title, and the many different types one can have, and intimacy versus physicality and stuff. I found it a bit pat, but yeah, you know, would I recommend it? I'd recommend it to like a young crowd looking for something to watch, but it's not going to cheer anybody up. And I was ready to like call it quits early on and start it later, but I'm like, no, I'll just finish this. And then I think, did I end on How to Train Your Dragon? If I go to November the 4th, I think I ended that in the last one, because that's when my last episode got published. So, longer and uglier than the original, but the story is rock solid even when done poorly. So that is kind of my whole deal here. In terms of video games, I did rent and play Sonic Racing Crossworlds this week. And that game is fine. It's yet another kart racing game that does not feel as polished as Mario Kart. I don't know why so much time later, like, this feels like primarily an arcade game, and it does have the gimmick of, cross-world switching, where you can vote on a track to go into based on where you drive on the track and go into a completely different course in real-time loading. So that gimmick of using, like, well, it's not a solid-state drive, but the sort of rift apart mechanic that Ratchet and Clank used, except I played it on Xbox One. I was somewhat interesting, but I just found it like clunky and arcadey. The problem I have with a lot of these kart racers that aren't Mario Kart is that you don't feel, and I'll use Crash Nitro Kart as an example, you don't feel like you're actually driving on the course you're driving on. It doesn't feel very unique. It just feels like you're on a moving platform, and the floor could be, or the road could be, anything, and it's just all window dressing. But I played it with my nephews and got some use out of it then, and they liked it. So, I mean, that's good enough for me. They were requesting to play it every morning, and I'm like, oh, don't you want to play Smash Bros? Don't you want to play this? Obviously better games, but they wanted to play that. Now, one of them is so young that he needed help to control it, but I was happy to oblige, and I found it to be fun. Maybe I might play it again before then. Who knows? And then I mentioned, or might have mentioned, that I played Lego Party, another new game from September on last gen. This one is out on Netflix, and I played it very, very briefly through Netflix. And the way I did that was, again, with my nephews. I downloaded the Netflix app on my phone, but I have my loaner phone that I was given by Staples, and then I also have my old phone, which I dropped in Smash, but still runs on modern Android, and you only need that to run as a controller. So what I did was, after great pain, and the apps were downloaded, and all my phones were charged, which took like a bit. I even tried plugging one in while I did it. And again, you then have to give this to essentially toddlers and young boys to play alongside. And they're, again, you're dealing with something where the buttons are not tactile. So looking at a screen, there's no feel, like when you're holding a touch screen, you cannot tell the difference between positionally A and B. So that's why that doesn't work. Netflix would be better suited to allow a Bluetooth option. Unfortunately, I cut out of it before giving the survey. Next time I'll do it, and maybe look into it this week. But my journey into cloud streaming continues. My first brush with it was playing on PlayStation Plus, actually, when I had it, and I used PlayStation Now, and it worked pretty well. There were some synchronizing delays, but I did use it to play through Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, or at least part of it, and enjoyed it that way, and played through Doom 1 that way. And then my second time was playing Xbox xCloud, and it did not go as well. And I thought it was odd because Microsoft is a software company, and Sony just bought, the two major cloud streamers after they had basically poofed. They bought Gaikai first by Dave Perry, and then they bought the remainder of OnLive, which I thought OnLive was gonna be the one. It turned out it was just too early to market, which is always an interesting thing, too ahead of its time. But Sony used that to make PlayStation Now, and then now Xbox says Play Anywhere and stuff, and it's supposed to be better, the xCloud and stuff, and now they made that available to all tiers when it was previously exclusive. So cloud gaming is getting more affordable. It's kind of at this quadratic equation, the base of it, where it's basically cheap enough that anybody can play, but not good enough that there's not a big customer base that they have to up the price. They still got to be competitive. So I'm playing on GeForce Now. I'm going to try with Moonbeam again with Cyberpunk, and see how that works out. Hopefully well. And it's kind of interesting to me because I think there's a small chance that I'm going to skip the PlayStation 5 Series X Switch generation completely, and might just further develop my PC, or I don't know. But I think we're 5 years removed from PlayStation 5, and I haven't gotten one. And my brother's gotten one. My other brother, I got him a Series S. I'm still looking forward to Grand Theft Auto 5, which is now coming out a year from now, delayed from May. So, yeah, still being supported. The new Call of Duty came out. Unfortunately, the reviews for the single-player campaign are brutal and terrible. Now, I'm waiting on the PlayStation copy from the library. I'm the first in the line, so I'll be excited to play that. Or at least for the 5 seconds before I realize how unreasonably hard it is, because in this version, apparently, you cannot pause the game, and your companions aren't with you as AI companions. They couldn't do that. The game is full of asset flipping, of using previous stuff they made for previous Call of Duties and recycling it. The rest is filled with AI, so it reeks of bad management. This is the first major one, developed more so under the guise of Microsoft. And of course, because Microsoft's an American company, that's too big to fail. It falls downhill and is not as good. I have no hope for the future of the franchise. But again, I haven't played it. Maybe I'll think differently. But when you do back-to-back sequel years, it's rough. I wasn't the biggest fan of Black Ops 6, but it was playable, and it didn't go anywhere adventurous, but it had a pretty coherent campaign. So I'm less excited to play this. This will be a slog. Modern Warfare 3, the remake, was a bit of a slog, but it was kind of like, we're under the gun anyway. What are we going to do? There was some sympathy there. It's like, okay, everybody gets one. This one's just a flat out, the wheels are coming off kind of moment. And I'm not going to have it for multiplayer at all this time, which I got a good use out of on Xbox last time. If you go back to this podcast, I played it on both Xbox and PlayStation, and I played the main campaign on PlayStation and the multiplayer on Xbox, and that was fun. It's fun to play online, but if I check the Metacritic of this, because I actually haven't, because they shield the reviews until release day, and most people review Black Ops in terms of multiplayer only. Yeah, 83. That's absurd. The user score is way more accurate at 1.9. Why are these critics giving it decent reviews? Because here's, if I go to PlayStation 4, nobody's reviewed it for PlayStation 4. If I go to Xbox One, nobody's reviewed it for PlayStation 1. Go to PlayStation 5, there's a lot, but yeah. Destructoid, 8.5. Less sweaty multiplayer. I don't like those modern terms used when reviewing something. It's an unprofessional, slangy term. I don't know what that means. Like, try hard? Okay, so it doesn't try hard? I don't know. A forgettable co-op campaign. But they like endgame mode. What, to me, screwing up the main campaign is a big deal. The scope, yes, I know it's trying to do a lot. This is to be determined. People have given a lot of praise to the campaign for trying something different, but to me it's just like being completely online. I don't even know if I'll be able to play it without PlayStation Plus. We'll see. Granted, I'm not paying for it, but yeah, it's a bummer. The co-op campaign, because it can be played in 4-player co-op, in endgame mode stretches the definition of Call of Duty a little too far with a bold approach that ends up falling flat. GameSpot, again, TBD. Has some successful missions and emotional ties to the characters and overarching Black Ops stories, and those moments make up for some of its shortcomings. It's funny to me how somebody was like, oh, well, the story isn't as effective as Modern Warfare. To me, they're two peas in a pod. Like, you can like Soap McTavish and Captain Price, or you can like Woods and Mason. You know, they're the same to me. They both have their strengths and weaknesses. It used to be that previous Call of Duties where now they're all kind of funneled onto the same game engine, where the Black Ops people used to have a different one, but it used to be there were strengths and weaknesses of like, oh, Black Ops is more story, Infinity Ward is more focused on gameplay, and then they just sort of over time blended into the same thing, because if we look at Black Ops 7 here, there's like every studio is working on it, and it's like 7 different studios. Now, you have to understand, for somebody like me who can only play the single player campaign, this sucking really sucks for me. So that's a bummer. Apparently Trent Reznor is back, briefly. Does it say anything about that in the development? No. It's just that it was co-developed by Treyarch and Raven. Beanox worked on the Windows version, whereas Activision Central Design, Activision Central Technology, Activision Shanghai, Demonware, Digital Legends, High Moon Studios, who made the Transformers games, Infinity Ward themselves, and Sledgehammer Games provided additional development work. It took place concurrently with the one for Black Ops 6, and every time that happens, like with the Resident Evil ones, some end up getting the short shrift. I think after Modern Warfare 3, they like rang the alarm bells and were like, we need to get the next one good, and then this one ended up getting the short shrift. So hopefully with the next game they do better, because they were greenlit simultaneously. I don't know why you need to greenlight a Call of Duty game. The entire company depends on it. What would they do if they didn't have that? Yeah. The narrative said that this approach allowed them to more directly build on the foundation. Yeah, whatever. But this is a game similar to Modern Warfare 3 and Ghosts, where when being initially revealed, they didn't have a lot to show, which means that they were running behind schedule, and there's not a lot of content there. I mean, they focused on multiplayer, but yeah, a lot of people online, of course, are like into the whole Battlefield versus Call of Duty debate. They can both suck, guys. I was interested slightly in Battlefield 6, but it's bad again. A, it's next gen only, which I can't play, and B, the story and campaign is unfinished. If it were considered finished, I would be more interested in investing in next gen, but it's just been flop after flop of like, well, Alan Wake 2 isn't as good as the original, but here's a cool remake. It's basically PS5, which has rendered that generation irrelevant to me. But yeah, but overall good reception for that. Are there many other games on the horizon? I'm wondering. Like, really, the next one for me to play is, again, I'm gonna try and do via the cloud, um, Indiana Jones. So we'll see about that. Time will tell. And next week I'll get to you on Indiana Jones. Provided moving to Ottawa and that kind of thing doesn't interfere too much. So that is episode 60 of the FilmGamer podcast. Thank you as always for listening. I greatly appreciate your, I wouldn't call it patronage, but I greatly appreciate you listening, supporting me.